Brat is out, demure is in, and voting trends are stating the obvious. Men and women are not the same. Today we're talking about all that and more, so let's spill the sweet tea. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Sherry, and welcome back to the podcast. So if you don't already know who Sherry is, she's a senior fellow here at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, which is how we know each other, but she's also an award-winning journalist. She's had she's worked successfully with many political campaigns for many years, and she's worked both at the national and state level. Her most recent position was with the Lieutenant Governor of Texas as his senior advisor, and now she's also the host of the Sherry Sylvester Show. So welcome.
Great to be here. I'm a big fan of sweet tea, so I love being on.
Oh, well, thank you. So how was your drive in today? Because you came in from San Antonio, right?
Total flood.
Really?
Flood. This is central Texas. The water was standing literally 3 feet on the highway, flooding over the cement pylons in the middle of
Oh, my goodness. Were you in a higher up car, at least, as you were trying to get through all of it?
Worse going south than coming north. So we'll see how it is going home.
You think you're going to stay in the city to try to wait out just a little bit?
Nope. I got a birthday party at home.
Well, I guess that's something to get back for. So the reason that I wanted to bring you on the show today is you were bringing up the other day that there's some new data on some voting trends that show that there's any increased divide between how men and women are showing up in poll results. So I think that's also important because I think it's a reflection of where the culture is today. So we're going to talk about how that's all breaking down, but let's start with the voting trends. So what's happening?
What we're seeing among Gen Z voters we used to just write off younger voters because they wouldn't vote. Now, every indication is that they will vote, and huge diversion among Gen Z men and women. Gen Z women they were for Biden, and now they're for Harris by 38 points, much more liberal, whereas Trump is winning Gen Z men. So not by 38 points, but he has much more appeal to male voters. And some people see that divide as a feeling that the culture is feeding women and pushing women forward and ignoring men, particularly young men. And Trump's campaign strategy has been to speak to young men. You know, some people called his parts of his convention as like a testosterone rodeo. He really reached down and talked a lot to men and the concerns of men, which are economic. They can't get jobs, they can't get training, they're behind, there's fewer of them in college than there are women in college. And men who support Trump say they feel heard and respected in a way that they don't feel heard and respected in the general culture. And women, of course, young women really reject Trump's style. And he is old style, masculine, very muscular in his approach, often aggressive. I think older voters tend to look at his policies. They support his policies. Trump is kind of an acquired taste. You can sort of take him or leave him. But younger women voters are not willing to look past that at all.
And it's interesting that while that's happening and while the trends are also showing that that's an area where he's lacking, a lot of his appearances and the people that he's been collaborating with and going on shows for have been podcasts that have predominantly younger male audiences. So he's appeared with people like Theo Vaughn, Logan Paul, and Aiden Ross, and these are all men who have a younger male audience. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that he would choose to continue to try to grow support from that arena without also trying to figure out ways to cross over and get some of that female demographic. Do you think that there would be any way for him to go about it, or do you think that this is it's a lost cause to try to go after younger women voters?
I definitely don't think it's a lost cause. We know that he's doing this. He markets towards men. I mean, one of my friends, a pollster, said Trump is trying to win men by a broader margin than he loses women. And the problem with that, Ariana, is that there are too many more women. So the percentages don't add up. About 10 million more women voted in 2020 than men voted, and those same projections are coming in the swing states. We talk about the swing states, and we think, oh, you got to go after, men and women. 60% of the voters in those swing states are women. So if he loses those voters, he'll lose the election. He can't afford to do that. But I'm wondering if he's so successful, and he's in terms of understanding media and audience, there's nobody that knows it better than he. He's got sons. He has young sons. He has a very young son, Gen Z son, and some younger sons. His daughter, of course, is also a leader. But I'm wondering if that's what he's thinking, or if that's just who he is.
That's true. And speaking about Barron, he did have there was one day where Barron had like four other male influencers that he brought over to Mar-a-Lago. They met Trump as well. But I do wonder if that is part of his influence, if he's thinking about who's the younger audience. His frame of reference for the younger audience happens to be his son Barron. So maybe he's unaware of what that female younger audience looks like. Because even his daughters are, because I think his second oldest daughter, Tiffany, she's technically a millennial.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure how old she is.
Yeah, they're older.
But either way, it's a little bit different than him having access. Like, what are the young people doing? Barron, what's going on with the kids? So what is something that you think that the left is doing to better relate to younger women that makes them so appealing right now?
What worries me about it, and I'm not of the left, I am of the right. That's why we're here. What worries me about it is the not looking at the substance of what is actually good for women. We have so much success here in Texas because we've been here for 25 years. People understand that conservative policies help the state to prosper. The state prospers, women prosper. We're working here at TPPF to make sure you've got better schools. You have options for your kids. Those kinds of details seem to get lost in the convention, which someone described, and I thought it was brilliant, as the Democrat convention as the Barbie movie. It really was all about hope and all about joy, and nothing about, well, what are you going to do about the Ukraine? What's happening in the Middle East? The side you're on doesn't seem to be the side that is acting with integrity and that the U.S. is supported. And what are you going to do about the border? What are you going to do? I mean, there seems to be a style. I've had young women over the last couple of weeks tell me, Kamala is presenting a new kind of female power and leadership. And I just don't see it. She's an accomplished speaker. She can talk. She doesn't say much to me. And I'm wondering what she's saying to young women that comforts them, where they think, oh yeah, I want to put this woman in charge of my life for 4 years.
I kind of question, though, if it's something that she's saying or that the party as a whole is saying. Because right now with Trump, he really represents himself as an individual, versus it seems like Kamala, especially her as a leader, versus I think some Democrats in the past. For example, I think President Obama was his own brand, his own person, but Kamala seems to stand somehow both in line with traditional establishment left, while also now being a new talking point for more progressive people. But I think the things that she's saying are the talking points that have been around for, decades now, that tell women, hey, I'm giving you the thing that I've been telling you for the past, that I've been priming you with for decades now, that are what you want. So there was actually one guy who was at kind of reporting a little bit undercover at the DNC, and he was asking women, like, what would you, if you had to give one up, would you give up democracy or would you give up your right to abortion? And the way that he was getting the women to have these interviews with him is he was acting a little, I guess, a little light in the loafers with his with his behavior. And so this one girl was just, she was like, well, I don't want to choose. But whenever it came down to it, women were saying that they would give up democracy to continue to have a right for abortion. So I think the way that the left, they've primed and and this is something I don't think the right has been organized enough to do with communications. They've primed women to be able to say, these are the things that matter to you, and you will be worse off and you will lose something if these are things that are taken away. And one of those being, for example, what they call women's rights.
Right. They really skew freedom. And that's what's scary to me, Ariana, is when you see young women not going a couple of questions deep. That we saw this at the convention. We're the party of freedom. Well, they're sitting here, unless it's the freedom to choose where your child goes to school, then we're not going to allow you to do that. We're going to force you into the schools run by the teachers' unions because they own the Democrat Party. I mean, why not ask those questions? And in terms of abortion, they really twisted that to a question of freedom rather than a question of life, coarseness of the culture, values that I would think young women have. I mean, it's always amazing to me that there will be marches to stop plastic straws so you're not going to hurt the baby fish, and yet, boy, abortion, got to move forward with that.
Mm-hmm. But I think, again, it's the way that they're selling and marketing it, which is we're protecting your rights. And so they're putting this colorful, flowery language around it. And I think the reason that Gen Z women are more susceptible to it is, have you heard of the phrase where girls are just saying, oh, it's just vibes? Or do you understand what people mean when they say it's vibes?
Uh-huh.
I think that vibes is now this, a word that describes emptiness behind what's actually there. So it's a box, it's a box of just something that gives the impression of something versus the substance of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And because that's all that you're consuming on social media, so even like stuff like the trad wife trend or all the different trends that happen on social media, they're masquerading and putting on the appearance of something rather than participating in the thing. So I have this belief that that's part of what's helping the left be able to sell their messages now. So whenever you say, I'm going to give you more freedom, I'm going to give you access to better things, they're just empty platitudes and vibes. But Gen Z isn't used to having to dig deeper than that.
Right. Yeah. And the clinging to the abortion as freedom is interesting because kind of where we started, what does that say about women's relationships with men and the kinds of trust and agreements that you should have going in? I mean, the options that we have for birth control today are wide. And I wonder why this is something that would bring people out in the streets.
So my answer to this is something that I think we might have a little bit of a disagreement. I'm really excited to get into it. But this is where we get into the topic of feminism.
Uh-huh.
So I would be willing to go so far as to describe myself as an anti-feminist. And I want to caveat that by saying if anyone knows of someone named Pearl Davis who says the same things, we are not at all on the same page. But I do think that that feminism has been a detriment. And a lot of what we're seeing in that kind of willingness to pervert values and what it means to be good is tied to feminism. And I think that modern feminism especially is tied to communist ideas that found their way into the feminist movement in the 1960s.
Wow. Well, I would describe myself as a feminist. I believe that my life would not be possible had it not been for women before me who moved in and broke barriers. I broke barriers, as I said to you. There are still. I was one of very few senior level advisors in the Capitol. Over the years who have been female. It's always noticeable. In the state of Texas now as a political operative. there's me and a couple other people. I mean, and this is a very big state. So I believe that it's very important to push those doors and make sure that I have every opportunity in my life, and to move forward. And I see this in every aspect, in sports, in religion, in every aspect. But I do think that there was a branch, and it's always been there, not just the 1960s. I mean, when some of the early feminists, Victoria Woodhull was the first woman to run for president in the U.S. in the 1890s, I think, and she ran on a free love ticket. So there's always been that confusion about that somehow women's rights to be equal would make us to be as insensitive about sex as men are. And I think that's a wrong-headed way to go.
So whenever you say the word feminist, because I think that is why we disagree, what do you mean whenever you use the word feminist?
A feminist to me is someone who acknowledges that there is basically no height to which a woman cannot aspire. During the Olympics, I saw women doing things I have absolutely no interest in doing. Why would you want to do the shot put? But if you want to do the shot put, knock yourself out. President, we're looking at Kamala Harris, that there's no reason that women should be held back. Does that mean women should be in combat? Not necessarily, but if they want to be, that's an option. But it also means to me that we understand that women are unique. That does not mean that a man can declare himself to be a woman. And that, I think, there's just this huge misunderstanding around that. And the whole idea that there is no gender, that it's non-binary. Those kinds of mental illnesses that we're portraying as some kind of progressive way of being in the world, I think those are very problematic.
Have you heard of the term TERF to describe feminism?
Oh, yes.
So the trans exclusionary radical feminist, do you find yourself a little bit more in line with women who are also being called TERFs?
Oh, absolutely. I have so much sympathy for men who think they're women, and you see them in public places, you talk to them. I've had them around me in my life for a long time. I ran a program one time called Women in Transition, and I was working with blue-collar women, waitresses, nurses' aides, and people like that. When you come to your 50s, your body breaks down, and you've got to come up with a new career because you can't walk that much more, So I was helping women do that. And these men came to me who were going through gender transition, from the med school. And they said, well, we were born in the wrong body. How can you exclude us? And I have lots of thoughts about being born in the wrong body. I don't know why I wasn't born in one of those bodies of people that could just eat anything they wanted, and didn't get fat. That's the body I should have been born in, So it's clearly the Europeans have figured this out. This is not a thing. Many of these people are gay, and talk therapy can move them away from this confusion and anxiety. And the things we're doing to them with puberty blockers and castrations and unnecessary mastectomies, this is criminal. It's barbaric. I'm so proud of TPPF for the laws that we passed to stop that.
To protect children, especially.
To protect children. Yeah, I'm TERF all the way.
So it's interesting that your definition of feminism then would be basically the belief that men and women deserve equal rights to obtain the same end goals.
Equal access, yeah.
The equal access. Okay. So of course, because I come from a Christian background, I would be able to say men and women are equal in dignity. Mm-hmm. And so for me, the ideas that it seems that you would describe as feminist, for me, I would just say those are just an outpouring of the Christian understanding of the rights that people inherently deserve.
Absolutely. And you saw that in what Christ was doing with his disciples all along.
Right. And this is where I think whenever I use the word feminism, what I think it's more a modern definition, what I've seen as the outpouring of what feminism is today and what most people who use the word feminist mean. So I think that what they usually mean is that men and women have the same desires and strengths, and therefore any discrepancy that we see between what they end up with is something that's bigoted and therefore needs to be removed.
No, I don't think that's true. I think men and women are very different. That's where we started this conversation, Ariana. We've got all these men who are leaning to Trump and responding to his message and feeling heard. That's what they say. They feel heard by him. They feel like he recognizes where they are, which is guys that don't have very many prospects and no hope of prospects, whereas you've got women that are not, that can't stomach him, and they're listening to the vibes queen over here and speaking to them. No, and I don't think that men and women are the same. I think they're different.
So that belief, of course, would go along with a lot of first wave feminism, voting rights, even part of second wave feminism for just access to the workplace and being treated equal under the law in the workplace, especially. But then your belief would differ from a lot of modern feminists midway, or I guess with components of the second wave of feminism being the free love movement, and then third wave feminism being the intersectionality part.
The intersectionality is nuts. I don't know where you are with the waves, Ariana. I consider myself a very modern feminist.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. I mean, and the circle of people that I am around, my women friends of my era, all of us did things that nobody had done before. So you go through, I don't have a woman model in my family that moved forward like I did to independently establish a career that didn't even exist. I mean, I wasn't walking around as a little girl thinking, one day I'm going to be senior advisor to the Lieutenant Governor of Texas. No, that it was unthinkable. And I have friends in all kinds of worlds who have written books and established institutions and moved forward in ways that those options were just not available to them. And that didn't have anything to do with them declaring themselves to be men. That had them to do with them looking at the world, seeing problems they wanted to tackle, figuring out ways to tackle them. And, but, and also, women doing all those, not to take away from J.D. Vance, you got all kinds of choices here. You can have children, you can not have children, you can raise other people's children. I mean, we have all these options.
I think the other component why I'm so willing to say that I dislike, I guess now whenever I say I'm anti-feminist, what I'm usually referring to is what I see as what current feminism is. So there's, so I'm trying to remember who the thinker is that originally created the idea of the three waves of feminism. So that went through like the early 2000s being the third wave of feminism, and now we're arguably on the fourth one. So what I grew up with is third wave feminism and on. And the world that I was born in, my mom is an optometrist, and even before that, my grandpa, he just had the mentality that education was super important. So even though as soon as he and my grandma got married, she was planning on wanting to stay at home, but he made sure that she finished her degree and continued with that before she eventually did become just a housewife, stay-at-home mom. But that was just the background and the world that I was born into. And now it seems like feminism is the thing that's threatening opportunities that I have as a woman, or at least what I consider to be the thing that now bears the label of feminism. So there actually are arguments as to whether or not the right should try to reclaim feminism, and if there's the components of what it was, which is defending opportunities to stuff and defending, for example, I think feminists like yourself would say that access to bathrooms for just women is an important part of being a feminist. That'd be part of the fight. But other people who describe themselves as feminists now, and the people who are running organizations that have traditionally been seen as feminist, are completely on the opposite side of that now. So whenever I say that I'm anti-feminist, I'm against those things that I see as barriers to women. So what the feminism that I've grown up with and I've seen within my lifetime is a thing that's a barrier to women being able to even consider, now that we can have the option to be in the workforce, a lot of modern feminists have created a world where women see that they're not being successful if they decide to stay home. Versus I think that you would, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you would be, what you want is for women to be able to choose which one of those
And you're
they can enter
probably
into.
going to make all those choices in your life. You know, our lives are long, you know, and I think that's where we come together with men too. Men want all those choices too. But I think, you know, I we'll have to talk about the waves offline. I mean, you know, I just think about Abigail Adams, you know, writing that letter to John Adams and saying, don't forget the women. And of course they did. They did. You know, Jefferson, it never occurred to him, you know, to let women vote or let us be part of the process, even though clearly we're very involved in the country. But yes, what's happened to I call this college brand feminism, the whole idea of intersectionality and identity politics and that piece, which is all built on power structures. The idea that patriarchy and white supremacy are what is how our country operates. And so everything you have to do is in reaction to that. That is, talk about vibes. That is such, does that mean there is no white supremacy? There is no patriarchy? No, it doesn't mean that. But that is such a simplistic definition of how the community of America works. You know, the how we work together, how everybody here has been able to move forward with their lives or try to move forward with their lives.
Yeah. It is interesting, too, the way that the culture now on what I'm seeing on, because I don't actually have TikTok. I just watch the TikTok videos when they get uploaded on Instagram. So about 2 weeks late. But it is interesting seeing women grapple now with what, I guess, what would we brand it as if we don't want to use the word feminism and let them take the word away. Let's say, like you said, did you call it collegiate feminism? So what collegiate feminism has created, I think that there's a lot of women who are finding themselves unsatisfied with what they're told success looks like. So that means that you have to, like you were saying, that you were one of the women who was part of that trend of breaking glass ceilings, of getting into those positions, saying that I can go into those positions. But I think where collegiate feminism takes it to is that is what you need in order to be successful. You have to be the one on top. You have to be that is the only way that you find success as a woman. So,
and I think that's why there's so much unhappiness, because I mean, that's not how I want to be judged. I don't want to walk into a conference room and know that I've got to be on the leadership team because they don't have a woman.
Right.
I want to be at that table because I bring more to that table than anybody else.
Do you think, this actually reminded me of something else, and I'd like to go into this first. Do you think that there's something that women can bring into conference rooms and into the workplace that is lacking whenever they're not there?
Absolutely. And if it's nothing else, it's just in the work that we do here, Ariana, or the work you do anywhere. As we said, there are more men than women in every aspect of our lives. And so if you, just as diversity is a good thing, it's just proscribed diversity. But, you know, yes, here we are in South Texas. If we were all Anglos, we would not be able to assess the audience, assess the customer base, assess who we're trying to speak to. And for that reason alone, I think that you've got to have women in every conversation. You need to have everybody in every conversation. So yeah, I think we bring things, and we approach things differently because men and women are different. Mm-hmm. We approach things differently, and sometimes that's helpful, sometimes it's just annoying. You know?
Right. Just annoying. But it's good because we work through it.
Right. Yeah, we do kind of work through it. Sometimes the process is long. I know when we were putting together the Bluebonnet Caucus, and I was thinking, gee, this has taken us such a long time. It's just a little meeting. Come on, you guys do meetings all the time. But because, and I learned this in working with farm workers years ago, because we hadn't done it before and it was a new power that had been given to us, we worked through every detail, mm-hmm. you know, and I think that's good.
Yeah. So the thing that I wanted to move into from here was talking about how feminism and the ideas of, let's call it collegiate feminism, have influenced younger women.
Okay.
So it seems to me that whenever the bar is you have to be a CEO and find business success in order to be fulfilling your role as a woman in society. Like, that is what good, successful womanhood looks like. And if you don't do that, you're a traitor to women, you're pushing women behind. I think that kind of language has left women very, I guess, just sad. So disappointed in themselves, a little bit sad. And I think that's where the different trends are coming from. So for example, brat, I think, came from that recognition of feeling that I can't live up to these standards that are being there, and even though I'm supposed to, so I'm just going to give up. And so it goes into the bad direction of brat. And then on the other side of that, there's some women who, like myself, where I say I'm an anti-feminist. What I'm referring to is I'm anti what you would call collegiate feminist, or maybe we'll call it critical feminism, right? Tied to the critical theory feminists.
Right. Yeah.
Either way, I guess I challenge that idea that my life is successful because of the work that I do here at the foundation. Well, actually, I do think that there are components of it of helping other people. That's the part that's important. It's not my video output, but it's the things that change from it. And eventually my setting my life up so that way I have a family and I'm leaving a better world for the kids that I have. That's part of what inspires me. So you see new trends like what I was mentioning earlier. There's the new demure trend. And it just goes back to a TikTok sound where someone saying that, basically talking about how whenever you go to work, you shouldn't be dressing more promiscuously, but you should act demure, be mindful of what you're doing. And so there's women who are just realizing that there's, I guess, have respect, a little bit of respect for yourself and how you're behaving and you're acting, especially within the workforce. And it just seems to me that these trends are showing that women are trying to grapple with what it means to be a woman. And I think that's especially hard now when we have Supreme Court justices who say that they can't say what a woman is. And I think that's an outpouring of that.
I saw that in the Capitol when I was up in the Capitol, and sometimes women would come in for meetings. So this is a pretty formal meeting. You're going to meet with the lieutenant governor's staff, entirely inappropriately dressed. And I'm thinking, what are you thinking? I mean, this is not a values thing. This is, what is your goal? You're here because you want this piece of legislation or this or that or the other. So why would you dress like you're going to a club? I mean, it seemed to me just like faulty thinking, and really bad self-awareness, self-esteem.
Do you think that got worse year after year?
It seemed to, but also there seems to be kind of a, I mean, people are different, you know, maybe it is more demure, you know, people kind of get it. And I think there's also this sort of thread moving in of people not wanting to work themselves to death, young people.
Actually, so speaking about that, I have 2 different videos to show you, and I would love to dive into what you think is happening and what we can do to change it and make life a little bit less miserable, I guess, as these women are putting it.
Whoever fought for women to get jobs, why? Why did we do that? I am so tired. I want to just put my feet up. Like, oh my God.
So that video clip is the thing that started this whole trend, or that's one of the first ones that came out. And so in the comment section of that video, a ton of girls were actually sympathizing this and saying, actually, I'm exhausted and I absolutely hate what I'm doing right now. And there's another video that I pulled up to just show some of the other arguments that have been made where they flesh out a little bit more of what they mean. So let's take a look at the second one.
Why is it that I have to work 40 hours a week just so I can have a place to live? 40 hours a week makes me $2,000 a month, and my rent is $1,660. So I work 40 hours a week so I can have a 2-bedroom apartment and an extra $300 a month. Like, It doesn't cover my phone, internet, food, you know? So not only do I not have any extra money, but just working makes me so exhausted that I don't have time either. Like, I get off work at 5:30, come home, and I'm just so tired. I'm so tired that, like, anything that I need to do outside of work, I then just push off to, like, the weekend. And I'm like, I'm just too tired to do this after work. I'll wait until Saturday. So then I end up with so much to do on the weekend that ends up having to be split into 2 days. So I have to do stuff on both Saturday and Sunday. So then I don't get a day off. I don't get a day to relax. I don't get to decompress. So it is really like working 7 days a week, constantly. And I don't want to do that anymore, right? Like, I don't care how poor and miserable I would have to be, but I literally can't have a place to live without this, you know? Like, I don't know what to do. I'm not made for this.
So, had you seen that clip before?
No.
Let's give your initial reactions. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, these young women, I told you they were 38% on Harris's side, and they've never asked them the question why they're having to spend all their money to pay their rent. You know, you can't run on vibes. I mean, what the left wants to do to our economy, what we've seen them do to the economy in the last 4 years, that's real. But that's not what you want to talk about. I mean, this is so, these young women have the wrong jobs. They have the wrong jobs, and maybe they don't, if they don't want to work, then you make a plan B, you know, make another plan, move home. Try to meet a guy and move in with him. You know, come up with another plan. But I'm never exhausted. And I work 7 days a week because I love what I do. And I mean, that sounds really, really trite. And I know I see young women, and it's always like a war. You know, and I've worked with young women. It's like wherever they get, they are moving to, not here at TPPF. Well, how do I get here? What do I have to do to get in the C-suite? Young women come to talk to me all the time about, how do I get to where you are?
And what advice do you usually give them when they ask?
Figure out where you want to be right now. Do what you want to do right now. You know, when I lived in Portland, Oregon, and I got an opportunity to take a job in New York City working on criminal justice policy. I took it because that's what I wanted.
So I think one of the differences, though, the things that you wanted, though, were very practical, it seems. Like, it's something that would allow you to be able to live. You could support yourself. You could continue to do what you love. I think some of the short-sightedness in this one obviously comes from the fact, like, if she's making only $2,000 a month, I was looking at what, if you're making, let's say, even $18 an hour now, which is normal for fast food places, you should be getting a little bit closer to $3,000, and you shouldn't be in a 2-bedroom apartment. So
exactly.
2 things right there.
You have to think about that. I mean, I didn't have any money. I mean, I was reared in the oil fields. I mean, there's nothing, once I was out of college, it was me. You know, it's not like there was help coming in. That's just one of the things you factor in. And you know, there's other things she didn't even talk about. What do you do about health care? Was her work paying her health care? That's a big thing. I've had jobs before that I only worked because of the health care.
Mm. So whenever you're trying to make those decisions, how do you parse that out whenever you say what you should be doing is something that you love and that you want to do, but also there's other things that have to be taken care of?
You make a list, you get a pad, you sit down, you say, this is what I want, this is what I need. This is how much money I need, and I need health care, and I need some place that's around here, and I don't have a car, so it's going to have to be a place where I'm driving to. Put all those things down, and then look at where the options are. I mean, it's not like we don't have jobs. We have lots of openings in this market. We'd have a lot more if we had different leadership. But we do live in Texas, where almost all the jobs in the country are created. So big chunk. That's not sounds like hyperbole, but we create a huge chunk of jobs here in Texas. So but focus. What would you like to be doing? That's what I'd like to say to those two very sad women. What would you like to be doing with your days?
I think the thing that made me a little bit sympathetic towards them is, one, I've actually had very similar conversations with my friends. And it's funny because they're in positions that they thought would make them happy. Sometimes they're even earning, more money than I am, because they're in the not in the nonprofit sphere.
Right, yeah.
But they're making enough money. They have what seems to be a comfortable life, but they're still not happy.
Not happy.
And I think that the difference comes in, and I've noticed just before, like being single to now being married, is that I have something that I'm working for, and it's something that's outside of myself. And I think that collegiate feminism or critical feminism places a value judgment on what your output is in society, or like your economic output is. So if you were the CEO, that's like the best that you can be. That's the best version of yourself. And anything less than that is a failure. And so I think that is almost a frame of mind reference of, I'm a failure if I'm not doing the things that please the critical feminist machine.
I guess maybe, but I think women are different. And when I think about myself, I didn't marry until my late 40s. Mm-hmm. But I didn't meet anybody I wanted to marry until then. And my life was lonely a lot of the time. And so I knew that I didn't have the life that I wanted. Every job was not a dream job. Every job was closer to the dream job. It was like one aspect of what I wanted to be doing. But by getting in one place, you could see another place, and you could see kind of where you wanted to be. Do young women still think, I thought this was over, where you go to a business and you think you're going to stay there for your whole career? I was moving all the time.
Yeah, actually, I think now people are less likely to stay at the same job for more than 2 years. So
Right,
I think
yeah.
you're right that that's a changing trend. I am curious what you think about women who totally lost my train of thought on this. I'm sorry.
Oh, good. So young women lose their train of thought too.
Oh, all the time.
Yes, there are pills.
Yeah, don't worry. It's not a sign of age. It's just
pills you can take for
it's
that.
a sign of being human. So women are choosing to. Yeah, I've totally lost it. I'm going to just flip a note card and see what happens here. Whenever you were, you said that you didn't get married until your 40s. And this is something that's interesting and just about being someone who's Catholic. I don't think that that everyone's necessarily even called to marriage. So there's no greater value that you have as a married person versus there's a lot of people who are called to consecrated forms of single life even.
Right, yeah.
But I think that the common thing
That
between
wasn't
those...
me. I really wanted to get married. I was engaged several times, and I was actively looking for the right person. So.
But I guess my question that I was going to say is, in that time whenever you weren't married, were there opportunities where you were taking on traits of things that would usually be associated with motherhood, so things that were serving other people, and did that influence your life in between that stage?
Taking on, I had nieces, and I have a mentally handicapped niece who was always important to me, and I tried to be a good family member, good sister, good daughter, all those things. I was active in my church, but I didn't do. And my friends were married and had children, but no, I don't think that I was.
Well, I guess I'm not even associating it with children necessarily, but I think that part of motherhood is self-service. Mm-hmm. And so it seems like a lot of the jobs that you've had in the past, and even the one that you were talking about for women who were in transition, like you were saying, I mean, not referring to the trans movement type of transition, but it seems like some of the things that you were gravitating for were things that were expressing femininity. And by that, I mean self-sacrifice to help those around you. And even your job in the politisphere seems to be a job that's dedicated towards public service, towards the public. How do I help someone's life be better than it was?
Well, I've always, I used to be a left-wing Democrat, and now I'm a proud member of the right wing. I'm not, one thing I've never been is moderate. And so I've always believed that that America should be where everyone can realize their dreams. And Kamala Harris stole my line. My values have not changed. It was my line long before it was hers. But I came to understand that it was conservative principles that were going to ultimately bring African Americans, Hispanics, and women into a life where they could fulfill their dreams. And so that has been my quest. But I think it's only been in recent years. One of the things I say about myself is, I'm not particularly self-sacrificing. And because I've had this career that's taken so much attention, it's been a lot of focus on me. And now that I'm in a primary caregiver role with my husband and with other members of my family. It's really a blessing, kind of a gift from God, that I'm learning what it's like to be a primary caregiver and put other people's needs first. It's not, but it doesn't come to me naturally. I've always been the person that's my own parents wouldn't call and ask me for help because my work was so important that they wouldn't want to bother me with, whatever they needed. So maybe that's why I want these very sad young women to kind of get it together and get themselves focused.
Is there anything that knowing what you know now and the type of stuff that you're doing now, that you would have changed about how you lived your life?
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, big question, I guess.
When you know that God has a plan, I often say, I don't know how anyone could look at my life and believe there isn't a God. I mean, I've been lived all over the country. I lived in Portland, Oregon, which is now like the hellhole of the West. I mean, I helped build that city, which was a left-wing city, which gave them all the tools to destroy it, and they're just now coming back and getting rid of the drug laws. I lived in New York City. I lived in New Jersey. I lived in Washington, D.C., living in Texas. And I think that the biggest blessing for me was getting to see so many different communities. I worked out in Brooklyn. There's more Jews in Brooklyn than anywhere else other than Israel. I mean, getting to live in that community, working in prisons, which of course are filled with African Americans and Hispanics, and learning those worlds. I like to think that the work that we're doing here at TPPF in terms of education, if I have any regrets, I mean, I went to public school in Oklahoma, which were among the worst public schools in the country. And I feel like had I been better prepared for college, I might have made different choices in college. Might have gone to law school, might have done other things. But mostly, our lives are in God's hands, and you get to a point in your life where you realize you're kind of glad about that I could look at things and say, I wish I had done this differently, but we'll just have to see how it turns out.
So if there was a conservative young woman in college who knows that she wants to make a difference because she doesn't like the way the country is going right now, what is it that she can do right now that would help make a difference?
Ask questions. Ask a lot of questions. What would make a difference? Everyone you meet, if there was a conservative woman and she came in contact with these two women on your video, that's what I would say. How can I help? What would make a difference? What can we do right now that will make you feel better? And because that's where you've got to start. I'm tired of being overwhelmed with pain and hurt. Okay, let's fix that for right now. and then how to sustain that. It's learning to dig yourself. It's so important, learning to dig yourself out of that hole. And often we conservatives, we're so optimistic. We fall in those holes less often, I think, than liberals do, because they've got so much fear. I mean, they think there's no future. They think we're all going to die from climate change. They think, if we're not, weighed down by white supremacy, if we're not overcome by the patriarchy, then, the world will blow up. So you cannot live that way. So I would just spread that message of joy and hope. Real joy and hope, not vibe joy and hope. But look, here's what's hopeful. What's hopeful is that you can have any job that you want. And what's hopeful is that the government won't take half your salary away with taxes. That's hopeful.
Yeah. Well, Sherry, I really appreciate you coming on and also having the good back and forth with me. I really hope that in the future we can actually have a whole other conversation together, whether it be on either of our podcasts, about the history of feminism and actually looking through how that's influenced women at different stages. But I really appreciate you taking the time to be on here today. And for everyone else, I'll see you in 2 weeks.